welcome to Star Trek Lost Stars. Hi, my name is Tony Morrow, and this is Star Trek Lost Stars. Hi there, welcome. If this is your first time joining us here on Star Trek Lost Stars, then welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for catching us here live, or if you're catching us on the replay, We're doing this live on YouTube, on Twitch, and today on Facebook as well. So if you're a Facebook viewer, feel free to head over to Lost Stars over on Facebook and catch us there. If this is your first time joining us, then you're probably wondering what this is all about. Well, Star Trek Lost Stars is a turn-based strategy game based on the Federation and Empire rule set published by a company by the name of the Amarillo Design Bureau. They make such games as Starfleet Battles and this one, Federation and Empire. It's all based in the Starfleet universe, which is basically Star Trek slash, the original series and the animated series, if you've ever seen that. Not Lower Decks, but the animated series. So think Captain Kirk, Spock, and all that noise when it comes to Star Trek. We play this turn-based game online using email and a platform called Vassal to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new resources to exploit, to encounter new enemies to oppose, and eventually to dominate the galaxy. So this is a 4X game that we play turn-based, and we're bringing you along this journey in these live streams. If you would like to join us in that game, then please feel free to let me know in the comments and or reach out to us here either on Facebook, on YouTube, and or on Twitch. And find ways that you can join us. You can also visit us at patreon.com/Lost Stars, and you can find us there and find ways that you can either help contribute to making ever better content for you or participating in the game in various kinds of ways. Would you like a ship named after you, control of a fleet, or even an entire province within the Klingon Empire, which is the faction that I'm currently playing? But at the end of the day, this is all about building a player base for those who like this game and who want to be able to play this going forward. So if you like what you see here, then please hit the thumbs up, give us a subscribe or a follow, and follow along as we kind of map out what's going on here on the show. But without further ado, let me get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. So this is a really exciting set of turns. Things are really heating up. And there's a lot of, as you may have seen in the thumbnail and or the description for the video, there's a lot of sort of diplomatic intrigue that is going on. A lot of events have happened in the past 2 turns that have really sort of upped the ante and increased the heat, as they say, when it comes to how we're all getting along. And the role-playing aspect of what we're doing in this game is really, like I say, amping up and upping the tempo of what's going on. So let's do a quick sort of recap of where we're at, what's going on in the game, and we'll kind of go from there. So let's switch over to the map. And here we are. So you can see this is, again, this is Vassal. This is the platform on which we play this wonderful game. And this here is, there we go. This is turn 89. So this is turn 89. We're going to go through 89 quickly, just as a quick recap on the map. 89 and then into 90. Actually, is this 88? No, that's 90. Sorry, 89, 90, 91. Here we go. So here we are with 89. You can see here, again, just as a quick recap of the factions that are playing in this game. And of course, let me switch my head so I'm not in the way. So as you can see here, we have the hexagonal map. We have the 5 factions in this game, what I call Big Red, the Tholian faction in the top left. We have the Klingon faction on the black and white color motif. You have the Paravian Horde, which are basically Gorns with feathers, in the middle of the map. On the bottom right in blue, you have the Federation, and in the bottom left, you have what I've affectionately referred to as the Batman faction. Yeah, the Batman faction. They're called the Borak, but the player who's playing them is playing them as if they were the Starcom faction within BattleTech. I'm just noticing a quick little thing here on the live stream. Little technical challenge as I go along here. I apologize for the delay. I just want to make sure that oh, that's okay. All right, well, we'll just have to roll with the punches here. You'll notice that when I switch over to the picture-in-picture, my picture is a little wider than it should be. That's just some technical issues that we're dealing with here. Well, anyway, back to the map. All right, so you saw those factions, let's say Big Red, Klingon, Praevian Horde, Federation, and the Batman faction in the bottom left. Let's zoom in and see what's what. So I'll switch my head so that I'm out of the way. And this is the real focus of what's going on in this turn, and that's what's going along this border. So I've zoomed in here so you can see what's going on. You can see that there's this white group in the middle here that is a minor faction from a race called the Kzinti. They are a faction within the Starfleet universe. Again, that TOS, the animated series, sort of Star Trek canon that we're dealing with here. And they're basically like tiger people. In this context, they are a minor faction that sort of popped up based on an exploration and discovery. This was previously a grayed out hex or a fog of war hex. A exploration freighter had moved into this hex and discovered the Kzinti, and the Kzinti blew it up. So they immediately attacked it, blew it out of the water, and that's where we're at. So based on the fact that they blew it up, immediately there was sort of a hostile intent and posture with it when it came to the role-playing aspect. The Klingons being sort of a wrong me once, forever in my bad books kind of faction, in the sense that other factions we've encountered have had a non-aggressive initial stance. Those diplomatic exchanges have gone really well. And there have been two so far that blew up the exploration vessel as soon as they found it. The first was a faction in the top left of the map that we just last turn pounded or eliminated. So let's zoom out real quick, and you can see that here in the top right corner, you've got this yellow faction here. And this faction was, again, discovered. They blew up the exploration freighter, and effectively this past turn, we eliminated them from a kind of a consistent campaign that we've been dealing with to try and eliminate that faction. We took that planet last turn. The Kzinti, these guys in white, did the exact same thing, and they've kind of stirred the pot. So these guys are here, and they're in the middle of everything, which is always exciting. And of course, we have in this neighborhood, we have the Praevian Horde, which is bordering us right there. So that's how that looks. Now we move up one map, and you can see we're a little zoomed out here. So no real big difference here, other than just sort of a slight moving around of units. Nothing substantial has changed. You can see that the Praevians are building a base station here on the border. I'll zoom in so it makes it a little bit easier to see. They've got what's called a YDK or Y dock, Y era being the era of technology. So Y is an early years space dock. You have a convoy here that just finished building a Y era base station, and you have a tug here that is building a Y era base station in turn 90. You also have this cruiser, Y-era cruiser, and an exploration cruiser doing their business to try and discover as much of this grayed out space as they possibly can. All right. And this is the first time I'm going to be looking at turn 91, so let's look at it together and go through the process, and we'll see what's what. Boom. Okay. So all right. So first off, before we do anything, let's do the round table or around the bases to make sure that we're checking in on all the important sort of metrics that we need to check out. First thing we're going to do is we're going to check EP, economic points. That's how much everybody's making as far as money in the game. So as you can see here, we'll bring that to the center. I can't make that any bigger, unfortunately, but I'll read it out for you. So the Borak, which is the Batman faction, are now making 64.5 economic points per turn. So that is the number 645 divided by 10. Move the decimal one place to the left, and you've got the number. So 64.5 EP per turn. The Federation's making 65.5. The Klingons are making 62. Don't worry about neutral. Those are all the minor factions. The Praevians are making 54.5, and the Tholians 54.5. Why is this important in the context of the fact that things are getting heated along the border? Because the EP, or the economy, how much money you're making, determines the order in initiative. The lower your economy, the sooner you go in the turn sequence. So, for example, in this case, the Praevians, I'd have to go back a couple turns to figure out, but because the Praevians and the Tholians are tied, whoever between those two goes first would be the faction that had the lowest economy last. So, for example, let's say last turn, the Tholians were at 53.5, and the Praevians were at 54.5, and then this turn they equaled out. Well, in this turn, the Tholians would still go first. And so that basically, if you're tied, the last of those that are tied that went first retains that sort of priority of sequence. So the Praevians and the Tholians will go before we do, then the Klingons will go, then the Federation will go, and then the Borak will go. That's how that sequence order will progress. In addition, we're going to check out fleet cap. Fleet cap is a measure of sort of the total ships in circulation. You can see here that the Borak have 59 ships, totaling 137 at total attack factors and 266 defense factors. Attack factors and defense factors. Any ship that you'll see, bases and so on, have a number associated with how much attack or offensive power they can create and how much they can absorb. So that's attack factors and defense factors. Once you have created or generated enough points of damage in attack factors that equals the defense factors of a ship, that ship will then get crippled. That basically cuts it in half. I can show you what a crippled unit looks like in a second. And its stats decrease, attack and defense respectively. Once the defense factors are reached for that crippled ship, the unit's destroyed. So that gives you a sense of kind of the total offensive and defensive capability of the Borak. And as we go through here, Carnarvon, again, that's just a minor faction. The Federation, which is our sort of our biggest neighbor, they now have 115 ships, up from 109 last turn. And they have a total of 362 total offensive, total attack factors, and 494 for defense. You'll also notice that there's this FC number that's right beside here, and that will take into consideration the, as I'm reading it, the total fleet cap that particular faction is creating. That is different from their total capacity. So I'll show you on my spreadsheet how that works. But basically, if you see the numbers are different somehow, then that usually means that there are some crippled ships in the fleet. Although you'll see here, the Borak has 266, but their fleet cap is 265. I'll take a look at that and see how that works. Hydran, ISC, again, all factions you don't have to worry about. Klingons, we have a total of 98 ships in our fleet. Total of 330 attack factors, 360 defense factors, and our fleet cap at 371. So I'll use those numbers to match up against our spreadsheet in a moment here. The Praevian. So you'll see, for example, there'll be the name of the faction and then SE. SE is ship equivalents, and then so on and so forth. So the Praevians have a total of 48 ships, 120 attack, 209 defense, with a fleet cap of 209. The Romulans, again, don't worry about Romulans. Tholians, our neighbors, Big Red, has a total of 87 ships, 120 attack, 309 defense, and 309 fleet cap. So that's how that is standing as of right now. Let's take a quick look at the map, and I'll give you a highlight of a couple things that have occurred. So as we go sort of top to bottom, you will see here that in the top right-hand corner, you will see that the yellow faction that was there is gone. That's because last turn we attacked them and eliminated that faction. Now, from a role-playing perspective, let me explain sort of what happened in the role-play. So we've been, over the past 6 or 7 turns, we've been slowly whittling down the number of units in that number of ships that they've had in their fleet and the military units they were using to defend themselves. This was difficult because they had a number of these planetary ground bases. Now, when it comes to combat, the quick and dirty of how combat works is you have a total number of ships, like you have let's say, a whole bunch of however many ships you have in a fleet, and their total attack factors, you add that all up. Then you divide it by a percentage based on something called a battle intensity rating. So it's a scale, and depending on where you fall in the scale, you will there we go. Depending on where you fall in the scale, you will generate a percentage of that total attack factor. Let's say you made 100 attack points total, and you hit a battle intensity rating of that would give you, let's say, 30% of that total attack factor. Then you would get 30 attack points of damage that you would then inflict on your enemy, and so on and so forth. So when that battle intensity rating is determined, let's say the scale's 1 to 10, you'll get to a number. Let's say the number is 8, and in the 8, the range of percentages that you can reach is somewhere between 35, I believe, 30, 35 to 50. And then so electronic warfare is used in this game. Planetary ground bases have 1 point per ground base, and they had 12. So they applied an economic warfare shift to that battle intensity rating that basically reduced the amount of damage we could inflict on them. And because they were so good at it, because they had so many planetary ground bases, we were inflicting substantially less damage. Even though our total number was higher, the percentage of it was much lower, and therefore we kept doing like little bits of damage to them every single time. That's why it took so long to beat them down. Let's say, for example, we were generating 100 and they were only generating 50 points of total damage, but they were getting, let's say, 40% of their total damage counted towards damaging us. We were only getting 30% or 25% counted towards damaging them. So 40% of 50 is still that's still 20. And if we're only inflicting 20 or 25% damage, then we're only creating 20 or 25 points of damage as well. And they just had more ships to soak up more damage over time, and they were repairing and so on and so forth. So it took a much longer time to whittle them down. That's a bit of a long story. So nonetheless, that story ended last turn, and we eliminated them. Why is that important? Because as we scroll down here and we look at the Kzinti, so I'll show you this in a second why that icon changed. But the Kzinti have, so they have this fleet here of command cruiser, strike cruiser, a Y-era strike cruiser, interesting, Y-era strike cruiser, a Y-era heavy cruiser, a bunch of these frigates, and then W-era frigates. So they created this fleet, and in addition to the fleet, they also have another 12 planetary ground bases. Those ground bases are going to make attacking them a huge pain in the butt. It is what it is. So it's going to be, because they have a reasonably large fleet, it's going to take a while to sort of whittle these guys down. And because of the diplomatic situation that's going on, hey Ken, nice to see you again, buddy. This is going to be challenging. So I share with you the planetary ground base thing, because that's how this is going to sort of play out. Incidentally, for those of you who are in the chat, I can see Ken typing away here on YouTube. I'm monitoring the YouTube chat here in front of me. The Twitch chat I am not effectively monitoring, so I'm not watching the Twitch chat. Let's just check it real quick here. Nothing in the Twitch chat. Although I see we got a new follower joining us here, Four Gathers. Nice to see, although he's not actually in the chat right now. And on Facebook, let's see here. Can't see any chat in Facebook as of right now. So if you're looking to join us here on the chat, then please feel free to chat with us here in the YouTube chat. That's the chat I'll be monitoring, so feel free to join us there. Right, so back to the map as we were working away here. So as you can see here, we've got this Y. So there is a convoy here coming from the Tholians, and we have a convoy here going that way. There's a little bit of, as far as game icons, this YCOM should look like my CC here. I'll zoom in so it's maybe a little easier to see. So these should be the same icon, just one in red and one in black. Due to an oversight, we just didn't update that. That's going to get updated in the next sort of patch for the game in Vassal. And but basically, you can see that we're sending convoys back and forth. The convoy has to go to a YDK. So because there used to be a wormhole right here, which we were using for trade, now I'm going to have to build and upgrade a base into a YDK on this end, which I haven't done yet. And of course, my colleague here in red in the Tholian Empire has a YDK right there. So we're just going to send those guys back and forth, and we'll sort that out shortly. Again, the sort of wonderful exchange of what's going on here along the border with the Paravians, and then we have the Federation. So the Federation, like in sort of traditional Star Trek, the Federation is the elephant in the room. And while this term they're not the most economically powerful faction in the game, they have been up to this point. And that is based on some fortunate rolls and sort of some tweaking, I guess, as far as just how the game has mapped out up to this point. The Federation's been in a very fortunate position. So they also have the largest military, as you saw, by fleet cap. And so let's just take a quick look as to what they have along the border here. You can see, I'll just take away the ships for a second. You can see they have a nice network of Y-era base stations with a YDK positioned right here. By contrast, we in the Klingon Empire have the wormhole, which we have a YDK on, which is allowing us to defend that location. And we are building out our base station infrastructure along the border as well. When it comes to ships, you can see that there are a number of single VTMs, which are basically these Corvette-style ships along the border here on the Federation. And then you have basically two large fleets. So the first fleet we'll look at is Second Fleet. And Second Fleet hasn't substantially changed since the last time we looked at it. There are two cruisers, one middle or more modern cruiser and one older Y-era cruiser. There were three of these more modern or middle era light cruisers, three Y-era light cruisers, two Y-era DDs or destroyers, three frigates, and then three of these corvettes. Not an insignificant fleet, certainly, and it hasn't substantially changed. If we look at the Third Fleet hasn't, again, substantially changed. It still has 9 M-era light cruisers and 6 M-era frigates, as well as 3 of these corvettes, and 2 cruisers, M-era cruisers. So that's kind of not an insignificant force, and it is when the Federation moved that fleet up, Third Fleet, to this, that's when we started building out our sort of defensive posture on our side. So what do we have? We've got Green and First Reserve. So we'll look at Green Fleet first. Green Fleet here, you can see a whole stack of units. It looks sort of worse than it is, so to speak. Whoops. I'll map them out here so it's a little easier to look at. All right, so we have a total of 12, 15, 17 ships, and they're all these E4Ms. So E4Ms have a 4 attack, 3 defense, and they're basically all like frigates. They're technically called escorts, but they're like frigates, and they have a little more punch than your average frigate. So 6 to 12, 12 to 15, and 17 of these ships right there. Now, in addition to that, we also have First Reserve. Now, First Reserve is, and I'll explain this in a second, basically consider it part of Green Fleet. It's just sort of a separate task group that can be redeployed if required. So you have a Dreadnought class cruiser, or Dreadnought here, which is the C4B. You have a cruiser, the D6M, and a total of 9 of the E4Ms. Now, when you get the reserve technology in the technology progression, I'll show you here in a second, you get the ability to put this counter, like an F&E, on a group of ships. The group of ships cannot be larger than the command factor of the ship that's controlling it, in this case the Dreadnought, so it can control it plus 10 other ships. So if you count that out, that's 9 plus the D6, 10. So that's 11 ships total, which is the total fleet size that a Dreadnought can control. Those ships can be moved following another player's movement. So for example, if another player were to attack, let's say it was the Federation, if they were to move over and attack somewhere other than this hex, then First Reserve can move after they've finished their movement and, you know, move all their units to be able to attack us. After they're done all their movement, then I can use First Reserve and move those ships to be able to attack and defend, basically to be able to defend against a Federation attack. That's kind of what happens there. Interesting. And then, of course, we've got the number of different factions along, or sorry, ships along here. We've got 2, 2, 2, and 2 of these E4Ms supporting these various bases. And so what's interesting here is that this Gorn faction that's opened up here, the Gorn initially were a minor faction, and now that they've opened up as a minor faction, now they've shown up as a vassal for the Paravians, because they've done this role-playing piece. And I'm a little bit blind to the role-playing piece when it comes to how that player is doing the role-playing with the game master to be able to make that happen. But obviously it's working very well for him, because he is he's got a total of, zoom out here a sec, he's got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 different minor factions who are currently vassals of the Paravian Empire. Why is that significant? Because those ships can now, those factions, those minor races, can support or maintain their fleets. They provide a small percentage of their income, what that percentage is I'm not sure, to the Paravian Empire. And the Paravian Empire can use those fleets in the defense of its ships in the future. So very interesting. Very interesting. It's going to make me think about stuff. All right. So, any questions right now as far as where we're at in the chat? Feel free to fire them at me. We're going to open up the spreadsheet and let's take a look. Turn 91. Boom. All right, let's zoom in and let's take a look at some stuff here. All right, so you can see our economy. We are at 62 total economic factors. You can see in this turn, we lost a dagger team. Those are the prime teams. Says it was killed in a transport accident. That's just a random event that's occurred, so nothing I can do about that. And then we had a mission that they were involved with, and they were injured on the course of that mission, so they have to be sort of repaired. What's this -4? For missing material. Missing material in a pair of key transshipment points. 2 Gorn, a Gazinti, human race. What? Hold on. Let's read that. I can't read that very well. 4 EP from missing material in a pair of key transshipment points. 2 Gorn, a Kazinti, and a human are found dead at 2 locations. Huh. Interesting. All right. So this all plays into the what's going on with the RP piece. So let me take this second, and I'm going to open up the emails, and I'm going to share with you the series of events that have occurred. Yeah, let's take a look at this. Series of events that have occurred when it came to what's going on. So first of all, the Kzinti, which was that minor faction in sort of near the border, they've been causing a little bit of issues. So I had ships moving around them because I wasn't attacking them, but I was moving around them, and so they sent me a very short, brief message. A tight beam broadcast from the Kzinti Holdfast, which is what they call themselves. Cease your flybys of our territory immediately. To which I responded, tight beam, reply to the Kzinti Holdfast. You have the audacity to make such bold demands after the cowardly attack and destruction of our unarmed exploration freighter? Our vessels are operating in Klingon territory, and we do not recognize the claim of a dishonorable species who fires on unarmed vessels. Challenge us in open combat if you dare, or stay huddled close to home and say nothing like the cowardly kiddies that you are. Brigadier General Kempek, Officer in Command, Southern Border Region. So the response from them was very short. We dare. Okay. All right. So that, game on. Let's see how this is going to go. However, in response to that, where are we here? In response to that, this series of events occurred. So, Streak of Light, Serengeti, 14 October 110. Attention to all governments and nations of the galaxy, and particularly the Paravian Horde. This is the Kzinti speaking, we have watched the continuous assaults of the Klingons on the Pro-Hulitite Convention for many years. That was the yellow faction we pounded in the top right corner. And weep for them. The Klingons have and continue to threaten our world with the same and call us dishonorable for defending our world and sector despite their constant armed incursions. Enough is enough. Recognizing the peaceful, light-handed treatment of the nearby Lyrans, Borak, and most recently, the Gorn, by the Paravian Horde, we offer vassalage to them under the same terms given to these three worlds. That they protect us from Klingon aggression. King Mufasa. So here's an interesting thing to think about. I just want to point out Lyrans, Borak, and Gorn. So the Borak are effectively humans, as far as how we're playing it out in this game. They're effectively humans. The Gorn, the Borak, these are minor factions that the Paravians have. And to go back to our spreadsheet ever so quickly, the note that was put there from last turn was that Gorn, two Gazorn, a Kzinti, and a human were found dead in two different locations. So there's only one faction right now that has partnerships with the Gorn and the Kzinti and the humans. That's the Paravians. Interesting. So in response to that, the Paravians put out a little message. They say, on the 15th of October, year 110, and now keeping in mind when they talk about the Khan, again, Paravian Horde modeled after the Mongolians. Ilkhan, I have received a transmission from the Kzinti Holdfast, specifically to us. The message was broadcast to the galaxy on wideband, but the message is also addressed to and concerns us directly. Stonefeather slides the pad across the table facing the Ilkhan. Tapping the pad with one sharp talon, the message plays. For one long moment, which seems like an eternity, the Ilkhan's talons rhythmically tapping the table and his face in a pensive gaze at the holographic map of the Horde space. The Ilkhan thinks. He finally pushes the pad away. It's a trap. Ilkhan? It is a trap. It is a subtle one, to be sure, but the Kzinti have managed to outmaneuver us. Let me explain. Let us assume that we accept this offer. We gain a new vassal, more tribute income, a fleet of 15 ships, and a base. We also gain a flashpoint with the Klingon Empire, all evidence of which still leads to them being the ones who sabotaged our warp research program. Need I remind, which I did not do, by the way, need I remind you that the holdfast is within Klingon space, even though it is within 2 sectors of the border. There is a reason why we never sent a diplomat to that world or opened any sort of dialogue with them. Now, let us assume that we refuse this offer. The Klingons are still priming for a war, and it may arrive regardless of what we decide, and soon. The big question in this case is, what message does this send to our existing vassals? The answer is that we would prefer to see a minor power burn when we have the chance to protect it. This undermines our entire diplomatic stance and policy. Undoing this string of successes. Let's try that again. This undermines our entire diplomatic stance and policy, undoing this string of successes. What would happen if our satraps, that's their name for the vassals, decide to break away? We'd lose a bit of income, but oh no. Yes, my old friend, the satraps contribute a large portion of our fleet. On paper, the Horde's fleet isn't nearly as numerous as any other in the galaxy, but with the satraps, and if we accept the Kzinti into our fold, it becomes almost equal of that of the mighty Klingon Empire. It seems that we are forced to accept this offer, if only to preserve what we already have. Perhaps we could negotiate with the Klingons, but it seems doubtful, even if it were to purchase a base to give us a clear path to the holdfast. Prepare a reply. Now, around the same time that he was sending off this message, I sent mine. Message to the neighbors of the Klingon Empire. In response to the unprovoked attack and destruction of unarmed Klingon vessels, the Klingon Empire will be proceeding to disarm the Kzinti holdfast. The Kzinti represent a threat to the internal peace and security of the area. They have made threats against the freedom of movement of Klingon vessels within Klingon territory. Security forces are being deployed to secure the area. This matter is one of internal security. Any interference by external state actors will be considered an overt act to disrupt the security of the Empire and an act of war. On our demands, we act in response to the execution of our sailors. The security of our citizens requires we remove the threat to their safety. We will act to satisfy both. Kempek, Brigadier General, Officer in Command, Southwestern Border Region. To which the Paravians replied shortly after, a message to the galactic community and specifically to King Mufasa and the Kzinti Holdfast and the Klingon Empire. The Paravian Horde supports and acknowledges the rights and free will of all minor governments. This includes the right of the Kzinti Holdfast to ask the Horde for vassalage with us or any other power. We therefore accept the offer from the Holdfast and King Mufasa. Be it known that as a vassal of the Paravian Horde, the Kzinti Holdfast is granted the full weight and defense of the Horde and its satrapies, in exchange for a semi-yearly tithe and supply rights. If the Klingon Empire is not to the Klingon Empire, it is not our wish to start a war between us, but know that any military action or military vessels sent to the holdfast against the Kzinti is an attack and an overt act of war against the Paravian Horde, mirroring the language I sent earlier. We could split feathers and ask how many demons can dance on the head of a pin, but I will not change the fact that the holdfast lies within the Klingon sphere. It is not part of the Empire, which it is. This means that your claim of this being an internal matter is moot and therefore irrelevant. The fact is that every major power will lose exploratory ships from time to time. The Empire is using this as a thinly guised excuse to wage brutal warfare against another world, to seize its riches and use the survivors as slave labor. We are seeing it even now over Prawn Julia. There does not have to be conflict. As we are the liege of the holdfast, we are willing to engage in the diplomatic sphere to resolve the slight to Klingon pride. Of course, the same Klingon pride may demand blood instead of an economic solution. Know this, though. The Empire may be assuming that the Horde has few ships, is out of position, and is technologically backward when compared to the newest and freshest Klingon ships coming out of their slipways. You may test this assumption at your leisure. That's a quote from Picard in, I think it was like season 6 or 5, when they were dealing with the Klingons. Stonefeather, aid to the Ilkhan. So, very interesting. Long story short, the Paravians are stirring the pot. So what's really interesting about this is that the player who plays the Paravians is all about this stuff. He does this all the time. And in previous games that we've played, he goes out of his way to sow dissent. And in one of the previous live streams, he was on live, and he indicated that that's not what he was doing. And yet this stuff still happens. So as a context, a couple turns ago, we were attacked, and the R&D on one of our key technologies was attacked and disrupted. That technological disruption, or that disruption on our R&D, was a huge pain in the ass. Huge. And the only two factions who could have done it were, as far as state actors, were the Paravian Holdfast or the Tholians. Now, the Tholians, based on our interaction with them and the player involved, really unlike that guy, that particular player to do this type of thing. Not beyond him, but unlikely. Really unlikely. Whereas this is like exactly the bread and butter of what the Paravian faction, the player who plays them, does. So he claims that his R&D was attacked at the same time. So, to quote a Warhammer frame of reference, theoretical. The Paravians are not the actors or the root cause of the R&D attacks. And instead, there is a other agent or party that is working to coordinate and disrupt the relationship between us and the Paravians. If that's the case, who benefits? It could be, most likely, either the Borak, because any conflict with us will draw all the Paravian forces away from that side of the map. We're literally on the other side of the map. And by keeping their forces out of position, it will allow an opportunity for the Borak to be able to move up and declare war on them and get some gains. It could be the Federation. If it was the Federation, they could force us out of position and attack us in a way that would cause the least amount of damage to them, because we would not be focused on them necessarily. And it would allow them to be able to, at the very least, take over that little pocket on the other side of the wormhole, to take that pocket, and it's 5 EP, and or they could sort of work to take something from the Paravians as well. But right now, based on the sort of the disposition of what's out there, it's most likely that they would attack us. So really, it could be either one of those factions that are behind it, and they were using like a third-party Orions to be able to do those attacks. And if they were using a third party, then those attacks could have happened before the Tholians or the Paravians went. So that could be it. And if their intent and their objective is to disrupt and cause dissension along the border and cause a conflict, they're very close. Like, it's essentially happening. Another theoretical. What if the Paravians are behind the entire thing and they are looking to create a war between us? Why are they trying to do that? There's no real benefit to them to be able to cause a conflict with us when we have superior, like our military strength is greater than theirs, regardless of their minor factions that can contribute chips. They fundamentally can't field as many ships as we can, and their ships are less powerful than ours. So if that's the fact, then why would they want to attack us? Like, it doesn't make sense. So that would mean potentially that they don't want war, and there would be a path to peace or some kind of resolution here beyond actual combat. Okay. Potentially. We'll have to see what that looks like. Let's take a look at the map. All right. So we're looking at the map, and we can see that along the border here, again, like their home fleet can move up to, contact with us. But it is like they don't have a strong infrastructure along the border with us, the Paravians. And if we engage in a fight with them, we are most likely going to lose these base stations along the border. Like, without a doubt, these base stations are toast, or at least one of them is. This one's currently under construction, finishes this turn. It'll pop. It'll get popped probably by this faction here. Minor empires. So the Lyrans. So they have, relatively small fleet here. But if they include their tug, which is essentially another cruiser, and this YCA, that won't be able to reach. They include the tug and the Lyrans, they can pop this, and there's nothing really we can do about it. The Borak, they're out of position. They're not going to be able to really contribute anytime soon. And effectively, what we're talking about is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, everything's kind of out of sorts, out of range, out of. Yeah, we don't really have ships within a. What is this? Hold on, just one minute. Yeah. This is this map. So yeah, we don't really have anything like that. I don't see why there's a motivation for the Paravians to want to start a fight, other than to just because it's the characteristics of the player involved. We'll see. Is it a prelude for another kind of conflict in the sense that this is a shadow campaign to be able to give somebody else an excuse to attack us? Maybe. If the Borak are doing it in order to be able to attack the Paravians, I don't know. I mean, like, we have a commercial convoy here ready to go across and trade with them, but there's nowhere for them to make that trade. Like, there's nowhere for them to there's nowhere for them to interact with. Like, there's no YDK anywhere. You need a YDK to be able to do the convoy. So there's a commercial convoy here, but it isn't going anywhere. It just seems like a very strange disposition of ships. Now, here's another factor to consider. And this could be very interesting. See this? And this here? These are elements of the Juggernaut Faction. The Juggernaut Faction are this high-tech Borg-like species that we put in to take the place of another player, and they're going to come in and randomly show up, essentially. They have there is a sector of the map which, when you zoom out, like, yeah, they're probably operating in this corner here. And let me switch. So probably operating somewhere on the left side of the map here, right? Because, I mean, this is where the other player was going to be. And now the faction, the Juggernaut faction, is somewhere over here, somewhere, operating. They have ships that are way more technologically advanced than everybody else. Like, they're operating GW ships. And they will come in and they will just pound other players. This fleet is currently working this way. And without a doubt, the Paravians are going to have to redeploy ships to be able to deal with this. Also, the Borak are about to face this fleet as well. So, two things. First, the fleet's going to show up in 2 turns on the Paravian border. 2 turns. So if we were to attack next turn, let's say, we would be pulling all Praevian forces out of position, and they'd be screwed. Just absolutely hosed. In addition, they would have some significant challenges because, as you will see when you look at the map here, they just don't have any ships in that area. They have a tug and a destroyer, another tug. They have nothing in that area, nothing. And so now this faction is going to show up. And I have a feeling that this Algedi fleet is going to be really significant. And they're going to just start walking through Praevian space. They're going to most likely destroy this base station because they will either, once they move into one of these sectors, they're going to pop a base and see it. And then they're just going to sort of follow the daisy chain towards the rest of the Praevian territory. And they're just going to continue blowing up bases and destroying assets until the Praevians get in there to stop them. So if they were to attack us, what would that mean? Like, what's going to happen? Interesting. I wonder. Very interesting. And like I say, if the Praevians decide to move ships towards us, because they can't really attack us significantly with any of the ships, because, I mean, they would have to declare war against us first, right? By attacking us. And by attacking us, they're going to cause this to happen. That would be an interesting series of events. So we'll see how that works. I'll be very curious to see what happens and how this evolves. Because I have a feeling that the Praevians are getting themselves into something they won't be able to handle. Because this other faction is going to, this Juggernaut faction is going to cause a lot of problems. So, question to you, those of you who are watching, do we act like Klingons and sort of like grab a hold of this potential conflict with both hands and just bite into it, like wholeheartedly go to war? And if we do, what does that look like? What do you think we should do? Or do we strategically wait until the Juggernaut faction causes some big problems for the Praevians and they are SOL? We could start a fight earlier, draw their forces away from us, and effectively we'd be taking the brunt of the damage, but the Juggernaut faction would start just walking through the Praevians, and they would have to make a very clear choice as to do one thing or another, like deal with the Juggernauts or deal with us. And that would be difficult. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, to be fair, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work. We'll see. Very curious, very curious. So, taking a look at the time, what do you think we should do? How do you think this role-playing is influencing the game? How do you think that, from a role-playing perspective, and the diplomatic intrigue that's what's going on? As a recap, right? We got 2 turns ago, we got our R&D attacked and significantly damaged. The Praevians claim they got attacked the same turn. The series of events that's occurring, like you see a series of these sabotage type of attacks that are all pointing towards the Praevians. They are without a doubt something. They they are at the root cause of something that's going on. Either they are the pawn of somebody else, as in like things are being dropped on their doorstep and it's making it look like it's them. In which case, who would it be otherwise? Is it the Borak? Is it the Federation? What's going on? And if it's not them and it is the Paravians, then what's going on? A war with the Paravians in itself doesn't necessarily win us anything. Let me just, let's go back to the map here for a sec. You can see here on the border, I'll switch where my head is. You can see here on the border with them, there's very little on the border, right? There's the minor planet, or the small planet that is on the border with us, like inside Klingon territory. There's this small colony, which won't grow much beyond a colony. And then there's the Lyran satrapy, the vassal here. So let's assume best case scenario. Best case scenario is that we push them back and we take this. So potentially on the best upside, we get 3 EP out of the whole affair. Worst case scenario, and I mean, assuming that we'll eventually take this, but like that's not, yeah. So assuming we eventually take this, then yeah, I mean, not exactly sure or clear how this is going to map out. There's no real benefit to going to war with the Paravians, and this little nub here is going to be a huge point of contention. Like, this is not going to fly. So there has to be some kind of resolution here. So we'll see. I have a feeling in the next couple days. So we'll be doing some role-playing over the next sort of like 24 to 36 hours. Most likely there'll be some turn submissions before Sunday, and turn processing for turn 91 will happen probably Monday morning, or Monday morning. And so we'll see what happens after that. But chances are that there's going to be something that's going to happen here, and we'll see what happens. But man, it's all up in the air and not really clear on why this is going down the way it's going down, who is responsible for what, and what's going on. This is a perfect example of how this game, which is normally played on, so Federation and Empire is normally a game that's played on a tabletop, and you can do a quick Google search, you'll be able to find pictures of the map. And for those of you who may be watching who know Federation Empire and you've seen the tabletop version, it's pretty clear, right? Like, you've got borders, you've got pre-existing states and actors and characters as far as Klingons, Federation, whatever. Like, you know how to play that game. This, and the beauty about this game, and this is why we love this game so much, or those of us who play it enjoy it so much, is because it's a true 4X kind of game. We play it turn-based using the F&E rule set, but it's the open campaign as per the rules, which is you start in like a Fog of War hex and you expand out. The tech tree that we have, and I can show you that if you like, the tech tree is effectively the tech tree of the Starfleet Battles tech tree, talking about different phaser types and tractor beams and like all the different technologies involved, and they tie in with capabilities. The Game Master has gone to great length to be able to research. In fact, most of the players involved in this game have had at some point some degree of input into how to map out or how to map the technologies and how we tie them into certain technology eras. In the game, as far as like mapping out the game within Federation Empire, they talk about W and Y and M and GW, these different technology periods, these different phases, and what technologies are associated with those. You can look at the ship displays for Starfleet Battles, and you can see the different ship systems that are available on those different class of ships. And so you're tying that together with these. And then in this system, we've developed a bit of a house rules example of how we're making that progression, how we're tying that to certain milestones and technological capabilities, such as the development of W, Y, M era ships, and then the various sort of support and ancillary technologies that go with it. Supply, strategic movement, command and control, things like that. These are all elements of the F&E game. It's just a matter of how we implement them in an open campaign like this. This game, the way we're playing it, is why it's so dynamic is because you have that role-playing aspect that comes in. I'm playing the Klingons very close to the traditional Klingon way of playing Klingons, whether it's TOS or Next Gen, or I won't even touch Discovery, but it's sort of the classic canonical interpretation and vision and application of how Klingons are played. Now, the Paravians do exist within the Starfleet universe. They do exist within canon. They're just not something you see a lot of. And they're effectively, like I say, feathered Gorn. He's playing them specifically, modeling them after the Hun or the Mongols, right? And so when he's talking about the Khan and he's talking about this sort of highly mobile hit-and-run tactic kind of way of doing business, that's what he's doing. The Tholians are much more sort of frontier-esque, and in their particular case, they have this sort of archaeological drive behind them. How that's mapping out in the role play, I've had a very little role play with the Tholian player. The Federation, again, essentially playing out like stereotypical feds, and because of my lack of proximity to the Borak faction, I don't really have a lot of interaction with Starcom. Or the Batman faction. So I don't really see a lot of role play with that particular player. So we'll see. We'll see how this evolves. We'll see how this goes, and we'll see how this the role play influences things. But the reason why this is so exciting, and the reason why you can get involved in this game, is we have these. So, for example, these minor factions. If you aren't familiar with F&E, but you would like to be involved and get into this game, you can potentially take control of a minor faction and play that game out, or play the minor faction in the context of this greater game. If you want to join the Klingon Empire, you can have a ship named after you, control a ship, a small task group of up to 3 ships, control a fleet of up to 10 ships, or carve out a province within, or one of these control areas within the Klingon Empire, and you become responsible for its defense, diplomacy, and interaction. How would you play that? Would you play it aggressively, diplomatically? Would you be avoiding conflict? Would you be seeking it out? I mean, what would you do? And if you're part of the Klingon faction, we'll be able to get together on regular intervals throughout the week to be able to have Discord chats, talk about strategy, talk about tactics, talk about what we're going to do overall in the financial management and delegation of fleet assets to whatever it is you're going to do. But at the end of the day, when this campaign is over, we're going to be starting a new campaign. They typically run around a year as far as from start to finish. And we are always looking for new players to be able to join in this campaign. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, please punch in your comments below. Add how you would like to play, what faction you'd like to play. Would you like to participate in this game? If you would, is there a particular minor faction based on the map that you saw? And I will show you again. We have the Gorn, the Lyran, the Borak, the Kzinti. We have a bunch of factions up here in Tholian space. Or do you want to take control of a minor faction in the sort of fog of war area over here on the left, and give you an opportunity to be able to build out a minor faction without the interference of all these other big players? Who knows? There's all sorts of options to be able to get to play the game. Or do you just want to stay in the loop, subscribed, followed, liked, all those kinds of things, and watch from a distance? And then when we start up the next campaign, if you want to play then please, we'll be putting up the call for players at that time. So have no fear. Your ability to play this campaign will exist in the future without a doubt. So with that being said, it's been about an hour, and it is time for me to carry on. I hope you've enjoyed what we're doing here and what you've seen. If you are, let me switch screens. If you are enjoying what you're seeing here, then please, again, thumbs up and subscribe. Helps us out with the algorithm. If you want to add your comments, we'd love to hear from you as far as understanding what it is you like, dislike, want to see more of, want to see less of. You let us know. And the more that you share with us, the more we can give you what you want and need. This is a great game that we enjoy playing, and we're having you come along for the ride here, and we would love for you to participate in any which way that you would like to, whether it's through comments, taking control of a faction, or just watching from afar. You let us know. So again, if you're enjoying this, please head over, if you feel if you feel generous, head over to patreon.com/Lost Stars. Let us know how you'd like to be able to support what we're doing here if you want to. Otherwise, thumbs up, subscribe, follow. Just let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing here. That's fantastic. We want to build this community of players and then have us all have the ability to have fun together. Until next time, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on Star Trek Lost Stars. I will see you next week. Bye for now.